When I saw him, he saw me. My gun jammed. So of course we always carried a knife in our boots, so I took the knife and I cut his throat.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade.
To meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
I had 3 brothers that was in the service, two in World War One, two, and myself. And I had 3 grandsons in the 82nd Airborne serving in the same division I did, the same company. I had 1 great-grandson that served in the same unit again, all in the 82nd Airborne 505. I went into the paratroopers because you got to remember, I come up through the Great Depression, and I was looking at the dollar figures, and that paratrooper paid good money, so I figured there's where I wanted to go. We had to serve 5 jumps, and you could, the 5th jump you could refuse. That meant you were washed out. But if you did the 5th jump, you were in. And the training went on from there. A lot of night training because our jump was going to be at night. And we also had sandboxes set up for the areas where you were going to land and what your mission was going to be. And we went over that time and time and time again. So it was embedded in your mind. It was building up to something, you know, and then when it happened, you was relieved. Because we'd trained for it, and we was isolated for it, you know. I'll tell you a little something about the government paid us 6 months' pay while we was embedded in the camp. Barbed wire all around, couldn't do anything. So of course there was a lot of gambling going on, you know, and guys, they spent their time doing that. And then when it come time to board our plane, well, everybody was in pretty good shape. Most had a good night's rest, and when we got on the plane, why getting into the plane for me, I was the last one on because I had a leg pack of 20 pounds of explosive tied to my leg. So when I went out, it would go out with me. And when we got over Cherbourg, the Pathfinders had gone ahead of us, and some of the other troops had gone ahead of us. So the German attack was pretty active. Lit up the sky like the 4th of July. Seen a couple of our planes go down. One exploded. And I saw one plane just almost disintegrate next to us. It got hit direct. And we had a shell that broke or exploded right outside of our plane on a wingtip kind of. And in the process, the shrapnel went through our plane. And it killed one guy on one side of me and another man on the other side. So we took a lot of flack, and the C-47 was a slow-moving plane, pretty much of a sitting duck for any aircraft, you know. Anxious to get out, but I would like to say, when we left England, our division was scattered in different airports because there was too many planes for any one airport. So we kind of had a circle around to wait for our group to get together. And in the process, it was a beautiful moonlit night. I saw down on the floor of the ocean, boats all over. And I swear I could have thought I could walk to France on boats. There must have been 5,000 down there. I'm just guessing, but boy, it was a lot of boats down there. And then overhead, we had the bombers going in. And above them was the fighters. And it was fantastic. I thought to myself, we could never lose this war. Look at all the equipment and everything, you know. Well, I jumped in, it was in the city, Sainte-Mere-Eglise. There had been a big fire, the building burning off to the side, and the French people were out fighting the fire, and the German guards and that down there. And when we came over, I was the first man out, so I jumped and I went down and I went through the glass panels of a greenhouse. But leg pack went in through first, so I didn't get scratched up or it. It was in a big stone building, and there was about a 4-foot wall around it. And I jumped over that wall and went through the churchyard, and there was some shooting in there. They had set up a machine gun in one stand there, and I could see John Steele hanging from the steeple. And but my mission was to make sure I got down to the bridge, and if we couldn't hold the bridge, I was to blow it. And I was supposed to, if we got down there and no one was there, I had to check it for explosives. The Germans probably had it wired. And anyway, that was my job. But when I got down there, the 508 had been there before we got in. They made a better landing than we did. And they had already taken the bridge, so I didn't have to do anything, just act as infantry. General Gavin came and gathered a bunch of us up down. They didn't need us all down at DuPont, Chef DuPont. So we went down to La Fere to be backup infantry in case the Germans broke through at a second line defense. But yeah, that was a real bad battle. And you got to remember, paratroopers didn't carry much heavy equipment to fight tanks in that with. So you had to make use with what you had. You know, we had bazookas, and about the best thing a bazooka could do is knock the tank's tracks off. Well, that stopped the dead, but that didn't stop the people on the inside from shooting at you. The hedgerow fighting was almost like jungle fighting, because the fields were divided by these hedgerows, which were probably anywhere from 10 to 18, 20 feet high, with shrubbery growing out of the tops of them. And it was very close hand fighting a lot of times. One instance, I came across, we was assaulting a hedgerow, and Germans always crisscrossed the fields. They'd been there a long time, and they had defenses set up, and they knew just exactly where to put the machine guns and their tanks and that. And well, anyway, and the crisscross firing, we'd run across the hedgerow to hedgerow, and the Germans would be shooting like crazy at us. And I'd see men dropping on one side of me and the other, and I knew the Germans were crisscrossing their fire, but why didn't they hit me? I was very fortunate. So on this one occasion, we got to a hedgerow, and we'd gone through it, and I carried a Thompson submachine gun and a .45 sidearm. Well, when we got through this hedgerow, which got the Germans pushed back to the next hedgerow, and as I just came to the top of the hedgerow, I just glanced, and there was a German laying in a slit trench there, and he had his rifle alongside him, but he was looking the other way. When I saw him, he saw me. My gun jammed. So of course we always carried a knife in our boots, so I took the knife and I cut his throat. And that's how close it was. Another occasion I had, we were coming through hedgerow, and the growth was pretty thick at the top, and I had just got, maybe from here to that doorway, and a German popped up, and he had his gun in his hand, but he had got tangled in grapevines or something there. And again, my gun misfired. So I had to take him down, beat him to death with the butt of my gun. So it was that kind of fighting, very savage. And you know, very gruesome in a way. We had we just getting out of the hedgerows, and there was more tanks in this area for some reason. I don't know what, but anyway, we had assaulted and pushed the Germans back. Well, the Germans always, when they go back, they hit another group and their reinforcements, and then if they got pressured harder, then they push them back to another group till finally you couldn't push them anymore. Well, that was the case. We had the Germans push back pretty good. Well, it so happened they bought up armor, and German tanks started running wild over the front. We had no tanks at all. In fact, in Normandy, there was only one opening in the hedgerows, and that's where the farmer bought his wagons and his livestock in. And I'd seen tank after tank that of our tanks that tried to go through those openings, and the Germans had them zeroed in with an 88, and they'd knock them out every time. So we didn't have any armor at that time, so we was fighting mostly with bazookas and hand weapons. So the Germans kind of overrun our first lot. I was in the first row of trenches, slit trenches, and the tanks started running over the slit trenches. They were just crushing the guys. And when they got within range of our small arms, I thought, where's my bazooka man? And I turned around to look, and he had been shot, and he was laying down, bazooka right beside him. So I got up and went back to get the bazooka, and I picked the bazooka up and aimed at the tank. And about that time, he had rotated his tank gun, the 88, and I looked right at that thing, and that barrel looked about that big around, you know, and I thought, oh, he's not going to shoot me with that big gun. Sure enough, he fired a shell, and it must have lit behind me. It must have been shooting behind me. And anyhow, that was it. I had shrapnel on my back and my legs, and I was pretty much out of it. So they took me prisoner. They had a field hospital, and their doctor just did so much, and he says, well, we have to send you back to a hospital in Paris. So they loaded us up in field trucks, and I was in there with it must have been a couple, 2, 3 other guys, and they were all hurting pretty bad. Most of us in and out of conscious, you know. They gave us as much help as they could in the field, but that wasn't enough, you know. So it took us about 2 days to get to Paris, which should have been just a matter of a few hours, but we had our fighter planes were covering the highways and that all the time. They wouldn't dare move during the day. They'd get shot up. Even at night, sometimes it didn't have the lights dimmed and that, they would get shot up. But anyway, they took us by these truck into Paris, and a German doctor operated on me and did a good job, because you know, back surgery back then was pretty touchy, and so I came through it okay, and I still have some shrapnel in my back, but the doctors always said leave it unless it bothers you, because it's more dangerous to surgery than it would be without. Well, I went to prison camp 12A, and that they sent different groups out from 12A, kind of a assembly point, and then from that they sent them out to different areas to work. Some in work camps, some in. I was sent to a coal mine, and the coal mine was probably, I'd say maybe a quarter of a mile underground, and there was an old Czech miner in there, and this SS guard, and the SS guard said to me, Arbeit. And I said, no. I said, Geneva Convention says I'm not supposed to work for you know, enemy forces, so I'm not gonna work. Oh boy, I should have never said that, because he took, and just like lightning, he took his rifle and hit me in the back and knocked me down, and then he did a little kicking on me, and I got beat up pretty bad. So I got up and worked with what I could do, and putting coal in the cars and that. So the next day I came in, the old Czech miner said to me, don't get them mad, don't get them mad, they'll kill you. And I said, well, I don't intend to get them mad, but I ain't gonna work. And I said the same thing to the guard again. I got beat up again. So I figured I better get my stuff together and work if I have to. But as far as escaping, a friend of mine, he was a former paratrooper, but he was from the 101st. And Tim McMillan. And he had talked to me on the way back to our barracks. Our barracks was about half, 3/4 of a mile away from the mine. And on the process, we usually had two guards in the front, 2 guards in the center, and 2 guards at the tail. And Jim said one time, he says, we're going to die, he said, in this mine. We were getting to where we were either thinking one way or the other. We have to either try to escape, or if we escape and get caught, we know what's going to happen, but we're going to die in the mines. So we did. One time we was coming, it was in early, was it April or May? I lost track at the time, but anyway, it was still kind of snowy and sleety out, and we was walking back to the barracks, and we was short 2 guards in the middle. For some reason, the guards weren't in the middle. Well, we passed this area of undergrowth and that, and Jim said to me, "Let's go." And gee, I said, "Well, you made the decision, we'll go." And we went, and when the group got back to the barracks, they always counted everybody when they left the mines, and when they got back barracks, they were short 2 guys. So they knew somebody's got to escape and left for some reason. Well, then they put the alert out. Well, we were on the move, and we didn't know the area at all. I mean, we had never been outside of the mine other than barracks. So we didn't realize the mines were close to a little village. And when we got close to this village, policemen in the areas, Anyway, the Volkswagen spotted us and he hollered for us to halt. Oh, we knew it was going to happen. Well, as luck would have it, there was a big barn right close by. Maybe the width of this building out there, maybe say 30 feet. We took off running to the building, and he didn't shoot then, but he knew he probably had us when we got in the building. And sure enough, we got inside the building, there was nothing there. Well, Jim was trying to find a place to hide, and I stood back of the door, and when he come in the door, I took it. They had like a 2x4, and they put it across these cross arms to lock the door on the inside, and I hit him across the face and killed him. And but before I could do that, the minute he come in the door, he saw Jim in the building, and he shot him dead. And that's when I hit him across the face, and I took his gun and his ammunition and everything, and I took off running, because I know people heard the shot. And sure enough, I got down to an area with kind of scrubby brush in that, and I could hear they had the dogs out, and they used the dogs usually to hunt down. Well, as luck would have it, there was a small stream, probably 20 feet wide, and maybe in some areas maybe 2.5, 3 feet deep. So I took to the water, and I knew that the dogs couldn't pick my scent up in the water, but the water was pretty cold because it was early spring, you know, and the snow melt and that. And I probably went maybe, I'll bet maybe 3/4 of a mile, and I knew I couldn't stand there much longer. I'd get hypothermia. So I got out. I couldn't hear the dogs anymore. They'd given up the search. I think they probably figured I hadn't gone too far, and they'd wait until it got light and they'll find me. I tried to hide near the road, but yet in an underbrush in that. And so I got to the point where I could hear artillery firing, and I knew it was American artillery. And next morning, I seen a spotter plane come over, Piper Club, and the road was full of refugees and soldiers. The refugees came first, and then come German infantry down the road, and then come German tanks, half-tracks, and the rest. And they were all retreating. The Americans were pushing them back. So I was in the underbrush about, maybe the length of a football away from the road. And I had seen that Piper Club up there, and I knew he was going to radio back to direction fire. So sure enough, about 5 minutes later, they laid down a barrage on that road. It just completely wiped it out. Wow. So I thought, well, the Americans are not far behind. So I waited another day, and the Germans had already passed, and I seen American infantry coming in. I thought, I ain't going to get out now. Somebody's going to shoot you. Well, they would, you know, because, you know, I imagine I looked pretty bad, you know, and so I waited until infantry got by, the ones that were on the road, and a guy in a Jeep had stopped there, and I don't know what he was doing, probably radioing back something. In those days, the radios were pretty big in a Jeep, you know, field radio. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I come up behind him and tapped him on the shoulder, and man, he was scared. And he said, "Don't ever do that to me. They killed me. I was crapping my pants." And he said, "What are you doing out here? You look terrible." And I said, "Well, I just escaped from a German prison camp."